What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Man Get Modified Fabrication and Off-Road. We are still in Florida right now. We are meeting up today with D.Till. You can kind of see in the background. There's the Jeep right there. So we'll go get a closer look. All right, so today I'm here with D.Till with D.Till Fab. This is his Jeep. If you have a Grand Cherokee that's 1-ton swapped, or you're thinking about doing a 1-ton swap, I'm sure you know who this guy is. Do you want to give us a brief description of who you are and what is D.Till Fab?
How's it going, guys? So I've been in the Jeep stuff for probably about 11 years now. Started off with the Grand Cherokee as my first car. Very quickly got into metal fabrication, primarily into tubing work. As you can see, the bumpers I make, all the Jeep itself, always covered in tubing. Big fan of it. Between motor swaps, axle swaps, custom suspension, full cages, it pretty much covers all 9 yards with it.
All right, so tell us a little bit about the front of this thing.
All right, so I guess we'll start off. We'll go bumper to bumper, basically. So we got the D.Till Fab stubby front bumper. This is one you'd find on the website. You know, you have options from no tubing like you see to the full widths. Same thing with the radiator skid tucked up in there. Go a little farther back, you get into the motor. It's a pretty mild build, LQ4 6.0. It's got a pretty mild truck cam.
What kind of numbers do you put down with something like this?
So we had it dyno tuned. It put 250 wheel horsepower and I think about 260 torque. So by what we were guessing, it's maybe a 400 horsepower motor, give or take. So,
see, and that's pretty good because given the fact that he's on a 43-inch tire, which is absolutely massive. I run 40s on mine, and these things are like, they look like they're twice as big as mine. Like I walked in here and it looked like a damn monster truck. Thing's huge. It's out of control. So those numbers are pretty impressive. So he's talking a little bit about tube work, and this thing has probably got some of the craziest tube work you'll ever see, whether it's on a Grand Cherokee or anything. I mean, some of this stuff is just insane how it comes together. I know I've built a handful of cages. I actually built a hybrid cage for a Grand Cherokee. And this thing, I wish we could kind of see the top because the top of it's out of control. I bet you this thing weighs 1,000 pounds just in tube work. So tell us a little bit about like the suspension setup and axles and all that you're running.
So we got the standard 2005 plus Super D axles. You got I'm actually running a double-ended ram PSC assist. You don't see that too often. It's becoming more popular. But you can see it's a full hydro double-ended ram, but I'm still running it as assist. This thing still sees a decent amount of street use. I just like driving around town, so I didn't really want to go to full hydro.
See, one of the things too, like I talked to you about when I was doing my steering setup, is on mine, when I put the Hemi in, I had to move my steering box over. So this a stock Grand Cherokee steering box?
Still a stock box.
So this is a stock box just like mine. However, if you look at his pitman arm, which is right here, his pitman arm faces the different direction than what a standard Grand Cherokee pitman arm faces. So if you look right here, which he sent this to me, it's a, what exactly is this?
I'd be mixed on the technical term, but it basically just reverses the input of your steering column. So that way it lets you flip your pitman arm. So now when you turn right, it's flipping it for you.
Yeah, so it basically has like some kind of gear reduction or something in here where when he turns the steering wheel, it flips it so that, like he said, when you turn, it's actually opposite, so that the pitman arm still moves the tie rod, or I'm sorry, the drag link in the way that it's supposed to move, but it's flipped. So what that does for him is, on mine, the pitman arm faces backwards, and I have a ton of like clearance issues. If you can see, like right here, here's your drag link, and here's his track bar. He's got like 2 feet between. Now, on this setup here, he's got his track bar behind the axle, which is basically you're the only person I know that has done this. And what this does is it just frees up a ton of space. And you said in another video that is in the stock location, correct? Like that track bar is in the stock location.
In the stock location still, yeah.
So the front axle's pushed forward, and I don't know how far would you say?
So I'm currently combined at 120. I think the front is probably close to 10 inches now, past stock. That sounds about right.
So, like on mine, I still have stock fenders. So on mine, just for the 40s, I had to beat this in right here, fold this over and beat all that in. He's stretched in the front. I would say, oh man, you're stretched at least a foot farther in the front than I am.
Yeah.
Because this bracket on mine is still probably in line with the top of my axle. So like that's insane on that. That's
so you can kind of get a good perspective of it too. When you look at the approach angle on it, I'll get out of your way. I'm basically approaching almost a 90-degree approach angle.
Yeah, mine is not quite that good, but man, that thing is impressive. And then if you come back over here, you'll see, try to get the sun out of the way here. You'll see the sliders are really tight to the body. They tie into the tube work right here. This is probably how I'm going to do mine as well. But they don't stick out super far. They're nice and tight with the bottom of the door. And then under here, full skid the whole way with an Atlas. Full skid up there. And we were talking earlier about like link lengths. So you're saying that your links, front and rear, aren't very crazy long. They're actually pretty...
Yeah, they're actually a bit shorter than I think most people run theirs. I think the front is just under 3 feet and the rears are just over now, which is, from my understanding, from what I've seen on other people's rigs, is a bit short, especially when you're running 16-inch shocks.
Yeah.
It does great, but it's something I've noticed. One thing I like about the shorter arms is it keeps them a little more tucked up, so you're not dragging them on all the time.
Yep, and that's crazy too because, like he said, he has a 16-inch coilover in the front. I'm running a 14-inch coilover on mine in the front, and he's sticking through the hood. I'm not even close to going through the hood on mine. So this is a huge shock package, two package in this vehicle the way that it is with a Radflow bump, Radflow 16-inch coilover. I mean, it's just packaged in there perfect. Look at all the tube work. It's absolutely perfect. All the welds are perfect. Everything's perfect. Fits in there very nicely. So if we come back here, we'll come back to the rear of the vehicle. And this is really why I drove 3 hours to come see you, was because
this is the project right now.
This is it right here. Him and I were talking a little bit on Instagram, and I was very humbled when he reached out to me and said, "How did you do your rear coilovers?" I was like a fangirl a little bit. And
hey man, I've been doing it for a while, and I'll be the first one to tell you, you are very mistaken if you think you have all the answers.
Oh, absolutely. But he reached out to me and he said, "How did you do your rear coilovers?" So on mine, we retained a lot of the rear unibody. I plated it twice in this area. We built a rear bumper. We actually did exactly what he did here. We cut all this unibody out, sandwiched it in here with the rear bumper, tied everything together, brought fish plates out into the rear bumper, tied everything together. You can see he's running a fuel cell. I'm still running a stock tank. But I want to say he's probably the first guy that's back halved a Grand Cherokee. I mean, look at this. The work that he's put into this is just so impressive. The welds, look at this. I mean, I could never dream to weld that good. I've been doing it a while, and I've never been this great. I mean, this is the most impressive. To be able to see a full back half kit on one of these is really incredible. I mean, especially because when I was doing mine, we talked about doing a back half kit, and I was like, nah, there's no way I can do that. It's going to be too much work. But looking at this, I really wish that that's what I would have done. I mean, not to say that just because I wanted to be the first, but kind of because I wanted to be the first, but that's okay.
It's amazing when we're talking about it, like looking at plating the OEM frame rails, all that stuff. And it's like, it's amazing when you look at it now, it's like borderline less work to just cut it all out and start fresh. Because now you have such a nice platform to build with, like the bump stops, for example. Now you don't have to plate the frame because now you have a frame.
which this bump stop design here is from Four Link
four-wheel drive. Yep.
He does a lot of Grand Cherokee stuff. I talk to him every once in a while. It's been a little while since I spoke with him, but this is a pretty cool setup he's got here. So if you're running a pin top style bump stop like this one, there's not a ton of adjustability in it. There's actually no adjustability whatsoever.
Right.
The only adjustability is you can basically loosen these bolts here. There's another one right there, and you can slide this up in that can. But once you're kind of up in here, that's as high as you can go. You don't really have much. Actually, you're maxed out right there on that collar. So what this does with this 4-link four-wheel drive kit, you can move the bolt holes up and down. The can is welded into this bracket, and it slides up and down. So let's say you wanted to just get absolutely ridiculous and put 46s on this thing next, which you might do. Who knows? He can take that bump stop and move it down so that it hits the pad here sooner to keep the tire out, because he's running out of room to cut. Pretty soon he's going to be cutting into the rear window, which isn't there. So it's really cool to see how this all came together. And like he was telling me, here was the original rear sway bar, which you don't usually see anti-rock sway bars on these at all in the rear. And I've reached out to you about running one as well.
Yeah, I will say if you plan on running one, bringing it down and back like this is significantly easier to package than having it tucked up like that. I'm definitely on the higher extreme of the scenario just because I'm running 16-inch shocks in the back.
Oh yeah, so the front 16-inch coilover, rear's running a Radflow 16-inch as well. And then this thing's weird. I saw this thing on a post. What exactly is that, and what's the benefit to moving it up like that versus down on the stock location like here? What exactly does that do?
This whole project has been really cool because it's been pretty time consuming, but there's going to be a few new products coming out on the website. This in particular is going to be, the idea behind this is going to be a bolt-on caliper relocation for the Sterling. I've been one of the ones that have bent several calipers over the years. It doesn't take much.
Just from what, backing up and hitting a rock or
backing
something?
up, hitting a rock. You see your buddy make an obstacle and then you don't, and then you just, we know what happens.
Oh yeah, I know how that goes.
So yeah, this will end up being, this is a 3D printer right now. I've been going through a few revisions with this.
This is just plastic right now?
Yep.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
And then that will eventually be made out of some billet aluminum.
That's sweet. That's going to be really cool. And then we were talking a little bit too about the setup that he's got here for the sway bar link. You were saying that these sway bar links are a little bit too short for this setup.
So right now the sway bar links are about right. The issue right now is I was going to go double shear.
That's right.
On this Heim, and this is not going to really work with the packaging when I put the coilover back in.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually swapping this one out with one of the ball joint like stud Heims.
Yeah.
So.
Right. So what that will do is it'll basically eliminate this bolt, so then it'll come through. There's the nut on this side then, and this
it's totally just flush. There's
just
no nut.
Flush right up against it. That's sweet. That'll be really cool.
You'll gain a lot of room.
So will this is kind of on an angle right now, the sway bar link? Will it be more flat up against that, or does that not really?
So that's a good question. So you actually, when you're in this travel range, when you get to 14, 16-inch travel coilovers, you actually want your sway bar links to be outboarded from the arm. And that's because you get so much ridiculous axle swing out of these things. So when this is at full droop, this link is actually way over there.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
And then that's when you get into that realm of like, well, now your sway bar arm's flexing and now it's hitting other things, or you bend arms, all that stuff. So technically, I would have liked to bring this out even farther, but I was running into issues with hitting the caliper.
Right. Now, moving the caliper onto the top, do you have less clearance than you would if it was down on the side, right?
Yeah,
in the original stock location.
If I would have left it in the stock, I could have definitely brought this over more.
Okay, gotcha.
I was being a little stubborn with it and just trying to get it to fit where it was. One thing I was thinking about doing is scrapping this entirely and just moving the caliper more over here.
You could move the caliper to the front as well, like they do on like some 14 bolts, things like that.
Sometimes so that honestly, depending on everything seems to fit at the moment, but if once everything's in place, fully welded, and I do final checking and it doesn't fit, then that will probably be the next option.
Right. And then, so this is a matching Sterling, correct? Match the around the same year range as the front axle then?
Yep.
What do you run for gears? 538s?
Yep, from 538s, and still running a Yukon Zip in the back. So
Okay.
that's their air locker.
Yep.
And then I got a Grizzly in the front.
Now, how come you run an air? That's weird because normally people will run a selectable in the front
Yeah.
and full locked in the rear. Why did you decide to do
So, funny enough, when I first did the 1-ton swap, this was still my daily.
that? Okay.
So I wanted a selectable just for street driving.
Gotcha.
I've had it in there for 7 years now.
Wow.
Never had an issue.
How long have you had the Grizzly up front for?
Same.
Same. Okay. Because I run a Grizzly and Trev runs a Grizzly, and he says that he's having issues with his, but I think he's losing his mind.
So I think the Grizzly in my front has broken probably north of 7 axle shafts. Okay. So it's held up. I actually just got a set of the East Coast chromoles.
Oh, for the rear?
For the front.
For the front. So yeah. I saw two. If we go back up to the front, I saw two. You're running slugs, right?
Yep.
So have you had any issues breaking these?
No. So the reason I went to slugs is because I kept breaking. So when I did the motor swap, and that was a big boost over the 4.7. And then shortly after, I went to the 43s, and I think the next 3 wheeling trips after that, I broke a stub shaft every time. And I was kidding. So when you break a stub shaft in these, your hub is gone. It breaks the lockout, and you're done. With the dry flanges, you can just knock the stub shaft out and keep going. So that's why I run those now.
So let me ask you this too. We always see like Peck Brothers, for instance. I don't know if you watch them, but they run 43s, and they're constantly breaking axle shafts. Do you think that on 43s you break more axle shafts than on 40s? Do you think that 43s are kind of the limit for the stock Ford shafts?
From what I'm seeing, yeah.
So 40s, you didn't break as many?
No, I definitely had my fair share.
Okay.
But my disclaimer for that would probably be overall rig weight, because this thing wheeling is 7,000 pounds.
Jeez.
I've scaled it several times, and just me in it with no gear, I think last time I weighed it, it was like 6,900.
That's wild.
So you throw a passenger in there, a cooler with some goodies, and you're over 7. So that's, because I see TJs or different buggies with 43s, stickies, and they beat on it harder than I can, because I know I'll just break shaft. So
yeah, for sure.
I'm hoping the chromoles that I'm going to be swapping in it do me better, because even this one, I don't know if you'll be able to see it in the video. The ear is
yeah, it's got a little bit of movement right there.
Which I honestly didn't expect to see from a 1550, but that axle shaft only has like 2 rides on it.
Wow.
So, but I'm swapping to the East Coast chromoles with the CTMs.
Okay.
So I'm thinking those should last me a bit better.
Gotcha. I also saw here you're running ball joint deletes.
Yep, just the uppers.
Okay. Now, why aren't you running the lowers?
I think when I ordered those, he didn't have the lowers yet.
Okay, because I run uppers and lowers on mine. Just curious.
Yeah. No, because I've had them I bought those like when he first came out with them.
Yep.
So I don't think that design exists anymore. I think it's like one of the first versions.
Correct. So the version that I had was very similar to this setup right here, and I went to install it, and I didn't have like all the parts or something. He changed the design, and he ended up switching to like a newer design, which I can show on my Jeep when I get home, but switched to a newer design, and it's slightly different. Now, like on this one, you have the 0-degree caster on yours.
Yeah.
I think I just got a set of the 3-degree caster, because like your pinion angle is like way better than mine. My pinion angle is like 0 degree. It's like 3 degrees right now, but it almost looks like 0. And it doesn't track very well down the road. So I think with the extra 3 degrees, it should track a little bit better. But I guess we'll see when I get home. I'll slap those in and go from there.
I mean, they've been great though. I was doing the ball joints. Honestly, weren't that bad for me. I say that, but it was probably every season. It was really just the uppers that were going out on me. So
yeah, and like what stressed me out about it is like you probably see in some of the videos and stuff, when people break the axle shafts, this will spin. We had a buddy that this happened to. It'll spin and it'll actually knock the ball joint out, and then the whole knuckle will fall off, and that's just pretty much the end of your entire wheeling trip. But the other thing I want to ask you, so like, what would you say is your absolute favorite part about this build?
Oh, it's a tough one.
I mean, there's a lot of good stuff on here, but if you had to pick one, what would you say?
I think so. I'd have to probably do two things.
Okay.
So the motor swap had made it so much more enjoyable to drive around.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because, like, you know, it's a purpose-built crawler, but I love driving around town. It's just fun.
People look at you like you're crazy.
Yeah.
When I drive mine, it's the same way. I get people
Yeah.
pulling up, taking pictures, all kinds of stuff.
So that just made it just more enjoyable overall.
Yeah.
But honestly, I just love how creative I've been able to be with the tubing on this thing.
Yeah. The tubing, when you started doing this cage a few years ago, it's about the same time I was building this cage for a customer, and I was like, dude, this thing's out of control. This is exactly, well, I'll do mine a little different, but this is really kind of what I'm looking for. Is probably now seeing this in person, I'm not really a big fan of like the exo cage style, but the way that you did this with it being so tight,
it was really hard to commit to the exo because before I did this one, I mean, I'm not trying to say this is the best exo I've seen, but you know, I'm obviously biased.
Right.
When I started it, my biggest complaint with the exos, when you see them and they're like, you know, super far off the body.
Yep. Mine is out here. When it's super far away, like right here.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know, it loses the appeal.
But yeah, it was a lot of work. You know, the cage goes through the body, I think 8 or 10 times.
Yeah, right up in here. So you use sandwich plates too. That's what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to use sandwich plates. On the one that we built, we ran it straight through and we just welded it to the top. And the guy that we made the cage for, he actually built sheet metal to go around it and tie everything, like to close all the holes.
Okay.
But I don't want to do that because I don't enjoy working on sheet metal.
Yeah, neither do I. And you can see in here, obviously, I have a lot of sheet metal work ahead of me.
Yeah, this is going to be really fun to close all this stuff in.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be done here. There's a ton. Yeah, this thing is it's just as cool in person. I'm really excited for you to get it finished and to see it finished. And we've spoke about a wheeling trip coming up here soon. I'm hoping that we can meet up and get out there and get a little rowdy and get some pretty sweet footage of my Jeep, Trev's Jeep, and obviously this thing, because this thing's an absolute unit. And I don't know if I'll be able to follow him, but I'm going to try.
It'll be a good time. I'm hoping. It's this project has definitely taken a little longer than expected.
Yeah, 11 years.
Yeah, right. Yeah. This it's kind of turned into more. I think just because I'm pulling certain things off of it that I didn't really need to dive into, but I just, you know, I enjoy the build. So it's, you know, you start digging into stuff like, oh, this would be cool, so let's cut that out. So
yeah, and like for me, when you go back into something you did in the past, you're like, well, this needs to be painted, or this isn't good, this is rusted. So then you're like, I'll just redo the whole thing. Next thing you know, you're doing a full back half kit on a Grand Cherokee, and people are like, why are you doing all this?
Yeah.
Well, this is why, because it's cool and you can put 43s on it.
It is definitely fun.
So, but all right, dude, I appreciate all your time. Is there anything else you want to say about this thing?
I think a lot of people see builds that are like, you know, really far along and might get discouraged. I know, like, I remember when I started out seeing builds that were like, you know, it's absolutely insane. It seemed like totally unattainable. And I think part of it is just like enjoying the process of learning. I think a lot of people don't realize that this is actually my first car. And I've learned essentially everything I know about metal fabrication because of this. So I think, you know, people may be a little intimidated to learn. And then, you know, there's certain things like when it comes to suspension, like, you know, maybe don't start with welding control arm brackets on.
Right.
But, you know, just start playing around with it. Like it's, you don't need a huge budget to have a good time. I think people mistake that, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like, for instance, like what he was saying, my first setup was a 4-inch rough country lift on a Grand Cherokee that I bought when I was 21 years old. And I didn't wheel it until I paid off the loan on it. Took it out wheeling with my uncle, decided that I needed 35s on it, and kind of went from there, and it turned into almost something as ridiculous as this. And like I was telling Daniel too, is when I was building mine, it was like I was always 1 or 2 steps behind him. I was always looking at his Jeep for inspiration. I was always seeing what he was doing, and I was seeing if I could do that. And the coolest part about him is I would shoot him a message. I would say, "Hey man, how did you do this? I don't understand this. This isn't working. I don't have clearance here." And he was always available to reach out and say, "Hey man, do it like this. Cut it right here. Move this bracket like that." So, like I said before, when I had the opportunity for him to reach out to me and ask me for help, I was like, this is sweet. Maybe I finally made it, right? So it was really a humbling experience to have him reach out and say that to me. So I'm really excited to be here, to have met him, to see this thing in person, because for the longest time, this has been one of the biggest inspirations for me, is right here. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed, and hopefully we'll catch you on the next one. Take it easy.